After 90 minutes, Carlo Ancelotti's Real Madrid and Thomas Tuchel's Bayern Munich are even with everything to play for in the second leg. In this video, I'll discuss the 5 adjustments needed by Carlo Ancelotti to make it to his third Champions League final with Real Madrid. Ancelotti opted for the same formation played against Manchester City, with Rodrygo playing off the left wing, with Vinicius playing at the 9, creating overloads on the left side. Ancelotti said about this change, "Playing Rodrygo off the left wing is offensive, not defensive. It was only to try to do more damage to the opposition defense." Both teams made pretty significant changes in the second half, which ended up being effective, with Carlo opting to move to a more conventional 4-3-3 setup after he started with a more 4-5-1 formation. The question is, was it effective? When looking at the XG, Real Madrid ended up with a 1.87, whereas Bayern Munich's XG was 1.57. Real Madrid had 10 attempts at goal, whereas Bayern had 14, with Madrid having 4 on target and Bayern having 5. Possession was almost even with big swings in the game. With the game being so evenly contested, the question is, what adjustments are needed for Real Madrid to win the tie at home? The first adjustment Real Madrid will need to make in this match is the most obvious one in my opinion, which is start Eduardo Camavinga. This game calls for the Frenchman to start for so many reasons. Firstly, Camavinga's recovery pace is superior to Tchouaméni. When the ball is turned over, Camavinga has the ability to recover the ball, and his presence allows Carvajal to push up higher down the line. In addition to what Camavinga brings defensively, there's also the ball carrying aspect, which was missing in our last game. When either Valverde or Camavinga are in the pivot, their ball carrying has a big impact on our ball progression and our ability to evade pressure. I think Camavinga should occupy the same position he did against Manchester City at the Bernabeu, on the right side of that pivot. But of course, that means in possession, either Valverde or Camavinga will need to be wary of transitions coming from that side. Against City, Jack Grealish was wide open in the first 10 minutes of the game, and Tchouaméni had to do a last-ditch tackle and foul him, which led to Manchester City's first goal. I can see Gnabry playing wide in that position, looking for that pass from Harry Kane, which brings me to my second point, which is pressure Harry Kane in transition. We saw what Harry Kane was able to do in the early parts of that game, feeding the ball to Leroy Sané twice in the first 15 minutes, which almost led to a goal. He likes to drop into those positions to find runners, and he was able to be very effective in those first few minutes. What we need to do is find a way to disrupt Harry Kane. Giving him the time and space to find teammates, like we did early on in that game, could be a disaster for us in the return leg. One of the tactics Carlo Ancelotti tried to employ in the first leg was use Tchouaméni to try to screen and stop their build-up play by having him press Bayern Munich from his position, but what it ultimately ended up doing is leaving a huge gap behind him for them to exploit. And of course, Tchouaméni doesn't have the pace after the ball's in behind him for him to recover. And the other thing is, Tchouaméni wasn't really pressing the ball aggressively in that role, which brings me to my third point, which is press aggressively or not at all. It's so clear that our press was disjointed. We attempted to press the ball, but Bayern was able to find spaces behind our initial pressing players. Our half-hearted press opens up the team to being exploited, because rather than sitting in a deep block where we don't give Bayern Munich space, we press them with our half-hearted press and we leave a lot of space in behind our players. Our defensive line was low to counter their fast wingers, which left such a big gap between our defensive line and our pressing attacking line. We have to commit to either sitting deeper without pressing the ball high, or we press the ball more aggressively with an emphasis on being wider out of possession and being more aggressive in the middle of the park to try to stop their transition opportunities. If Carlo Ancelotti is going to opt for a more pressing tactic in this match, then he also needs to be prepared to make substitutions when players are fatigued. We saw how Jude Bellingham ran himself into the ground in the first leg against Manchester City, and he needs to be prepared to make those substitutions when those players start to run out of steam. Our pressing has been effective this season. They are coming to the Santiago Bernabeu, where we will be with our fans. We should make the first 15 minutes of this game as uncomfortable as possible by forcing turnovers and trying to get ahead. Which brings me to my fourth point, which is play with more width. When Vinicius and Rodrygo played wider in the second half and they were instructed to run at their fullbacks, they were having a lot of success. Like I've said in my previous video, their fullbacks are not the best in 1v1 defending, and it really showed in the first leg. And we have some of the deadliest wingers in Europe in Rodrygo and Vinicius and Brahim Diaz. We need to apply maximum pressure against them and create that self-doubt early in the game. Eric Dyer picked up a knock this weekend in Bayern Munich's defeat against Stuttgart, and De Ligt is still training individually. He's a doubt to make it on Wednesday. Their back four is just so weak at this moment. There's no excuse for us not to try to force them to make mistakes, like the one Kim made against Rodrygo. By the way, that penalty that we earned in the first leg, it came without a lot of difficulty. So we really need to take advantage of this opportunity against this back four. I mean, Stuttgart just scored 3 against them over the weekend and it was not challenging for them. I understand that wasn't their strongest 11, but this is not a team that has been able to stop deadly offensive teams from scoring goals against them. And as long as we can stay strong defensively, there's no reason why we cannot advance to the final. I mean, just looking at their game against Stuttgart over the weekend, they allowed Stuttgart to have 24 shots on them, and 10 of those shots were on target for Stuttgart. I'm confident when I say this that this game will be lost by us defending poorly rather than not being able to score at the Bernabeu. Which brings me to my fifth and final point, which is use the substitutions wisely. The last time we made it to the Champions League final against Manchester City, our players off the bench had a big impact. Camavinga and of course Rodrygo scoring the double at home. Carlo Ancelotti famously said, "It's as much about how you end the game as how you start it." And we have the players off the bench who can make a big difference. Players like Luka Modric, players like Brahim Diaz. In our last game against Cadiz yesterday, Luka Modric was phenomenal. I mean, he ran the game. He had a 97% pass accuracy yesterday. And of course, he assisted Brahim Diaz's opening goal. That goal by Diaz was phenomenal. And it comes at such a great time as well. But just looking at Arsenal's opening goal against Bayern Munich in the quarterfinals, you saw how Bukayo Saka was able to run at their left side and score against them. And there was also a moment in our game where Rodrygo runs at Mazraoui and he easily gets past him. So that needs to be part of the strategy, which is really attack them down the wings and try to isolate their fullbacks because they're not the strongest defensively. The 15th is in our grasp, and it would be such a disappointment not to make it to the final and go out to this Bayern team. I know they have a great pedigree in Europe, and I know they have great individual attacking players, but they're just really right there for the taking. You guys might have to correct me on this in the comments, let me know, but the last time we lost at the Bernabeu, correct me if I'm wrong, in the Champions League knockout stages was against Chelsea, and it was against Thomas Tuchel, if I'm not mistaken. So I'm not taking him lightly. Thomas Tuchel is a world-class manager. We saw the adjustments he made during the game, but we saw his plan A and we saw his plan B. So does he really have a plan C and a plan D and a plan E for him to bring to the Bernabeu? But we saw what their strategy is. So now it's just about being strong when they're in transition and limiting their damage, because Vinicius is just on fire in the Champions League knockout stages. Let me know how you guys are feeling ahead of the game on Wednesday. Are you confident? Do you think we can get the W? From a morale boosting standpoint, we became champions this weekend. We're officially La Liga champions, and Bayern Munich just lost 3-1. And Carlo Ancelotti said he didn't want to celebrate. He wanted the team fully focused on Wednesday. So I'm feeling very good about our chances in this match. Thank you for watching. Hala Madrid.